This is Jonah Jenkins from Miltown and Only Living Witness, and this is the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers, like our Facebook page, or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Jonah Jenkins from Miltown and Only Living Witness.
And Milligram.
Yeah.
Promoting Miltown's latest album being released on September 5th, Tales of Never Letting Go.
Yeah, 28 years in the making. It was recorded and shelved, but they've polished it up, got it going, and it's a banger. Get out there and listen to it.
Let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Jonah, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Jonah, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Man, we are so excited to have you on tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the correspondence and willing to do this. So we got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's get right into it. On Friday, September 5th, Miltown will be releasing the band's debut album, Tales from Never Letting Go. After 28 years in the waiting, can you give our listeners the backstory of this album and all these years later? Just give us the nuts and bolts to everything.
Sure. So I used to be in a band called Only Living Witness, and after Only Living Witness split up, I was looking for a new band and quickly found a couple different bands. One was called Milligram, and the other was called Miltown. Mm-hmm. Miltown found an active drummer first, and that's why we pursued this one. And I was approached by folks at Warner Brothers, a label that used to be called Giant and was called Revolution at the time. And they said, basically, if you have a band that you would like to bring to the label, we want to sign you. So I brought Miltown because we had a drummer. So we had a bunch of songs really quickly. We had an EP, came out on Hydra Head Records, and that was like punk hardcore label, metal label. And we ran into it so quickly that we basically had, a bunch of songs that were the most primal version of what we could possibly come up with as a band. There was really not a lot of thought that went into it. Very rough and raw, still melodic, but we didn't really have a lot of time to develop the songs. So we just kind of recorded some demos. The demos got sent to the label. They said, "This is great. Let's put you into the studio as soon as possible." And we said, hold on a second. Maybe we should tour a little bit. Maybe we should, get to know the band's dynamics. Maybe we should record an album for free with our guitar player. That, all these options. And they were like, no, we really want to put you into like a professional studio as soon as possible. So that's what happened to us. We pushed really hard to try and work with our guitar player Brian, who was very active at the time. He'd done lots of recording of underground bands. And they said, no, we'd like to put you in with a professional engineering team, a professional producer. And they kind of maneuvered us towards the guy they wanted us to work with, which is a guy named Toby Wright. And Toby Wright had worked with Alice in Chains. I think he did some stuff with Slayer. But it wasn't a great match for us, and we ended up recording this album that was just the basic fundamentals of what we understood ourselves to be as a band. Yeah. Very like catchy, like rockin' songs, and they formed a great live show, and that's what we recorded. So it's really direct. And we were all listening to a lot more layered music, a lot more complex music, and this is what we come up with because it's how we were able to interact as a band. So I'm really proud of it as a collection of songs, and yet I would have loved to have been able to take a little time to build it into something like we were thinking, like Swerve Driver. Swerve Driver would have been like our ideal as far as like a couple of us in the band. Yeah. Other people liked, other types of music, but like if I could have done Swerve Driver, I called out Alan Mulder, Swerve Driver's producer, as like my ideal producer. And the label was like, no, we really like your vocals. We'd like you to focus more on like this Alice in Chains style. And I just don't sing like that. So like I said, it's something that I'm really proud of, but it's something that I would have loved to turn into something more layered, more dreamy, more even more esoteric. This is a really good logical follow-up to Only Living Witness from my perspective, because a lot of these songs had been written personally. I had written a lot of these like melody lines and lyrics during Only Living Witness time, and just playing with new players. So if there had been another Only Living Witness album, it might have sounded a lot like this vocally, with probably different players behind it.
Oh, very good.
Well, there's 13 tracks on there. How many demos did you guys actually record before that didn't make the final release?
So we had roughly 18 songs in the can going into the studio, and we did do rough tracks for all of those 18 songs. And what happened in the studio was basically they're like, let's focus on these 10. Yeah. Those 10 got kind of rough mixed when we finally were wrapping up the studio sessions, which lasted, I would say, roughly a month and a half. We were in Longview Farm for a month and a half, and at the end of it, the label was like, you know what? We don't hear any singles. Guys, this is the age of Smash Mouth, and you don't sound like Smash Mouth, so we're going to shelve your record. So we never got a proper chance to finish the songs, to mix the songs, never mind release it.
Yeah.
Man, so that leads up to the next question. When an album and songs like this that you've worked so hard on was put on a shelf or on a hiatus, whatever you want to call it, did you ever lose that hope that these songs would never see the light of day?
I did. And a lot of us did. The band members, we kind of commiserated over. We have this roughly mixed version of only 10 of the songs. I know we have 18 songs in the can. We had been working on these songs, playing them live, and we love those songs so much. Are we ever going to hear them? Like you said, nope. It didn't happen. And then we got this friend of a friend of a friend who had worked at some of the labels that both myself and Brian McTurnan, the guitar player and producer, we had worked peripherally with him, through the labels we'd been involved in. He worked as basically a label executive. I don't know what you call him. He was a facilitator. He's a manager. And yet he has no ego. He's just a really cool guy in the industry, recognizes what he loves. He is, for instance, pivotal in the whole Misfits situation. What happened when the Misfits did the coffin box? He designed the coffin box. He helped get the licensing in place for that thing. He really helped them to reconcile the Misfits name with the live action Misfits band. He helped them to work out the royalty situation. So when it came time for us to work with him on this Miltown record, he had already been through the ringer. He knew all the ways to make this happen. And he is just a kind individual. So he got it done. And he helped us to work amongst ourselves, and he helped the label to understand, it's better for everybody if it just gets released, even if it's not a big money-making venture.
Very good.
Brian was involved with the final mix of the final album, how it turned out. Were you involved in that portion of it?
Yeah, we actually had to finish a couple of harmonies here and there because a lot of the vocals were very close to complete, but not quite there. So I went down late last year, December last year, and hung out at his studio, Salad Days in Baltimore, and we just kind of put a couple of vocal polishes on some things. A couple of the vocals weren't even done as far as the main vocal track, and I finished those. And it was just great working with him because he really understands as one of the songwriters, not just as a producer. He understands like all the psychology of production. He understands the approach to translating what he initially had ideated as like, this is what I think the riff should be. He was able to translate that into, okay, so let's do, a harmony here, a harmony there, and let's double that. And I was like, all right, yeah, this is great. We were done in like a day, it was maybe a day and a half. And when it came time to mixing, he really understood what we were shooting for initially, because he mixed and was involved in the mastering for the first EP we did, plus all of our demos. He said, all right, let's try and do it this way. He sent out the roughs to all of us after he had mixed it. We were like, yes, this is the right direction. He finished it up. A couple times we had to like dig back into the original mixes and say, oh, I think you missed a track that we had buried over here. And he found that little piece, brought it all together, and I feel like what we have now is probably the best version of this album that we ever thought could be released.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you had alluded to the band had gotten to do some live shows. Can you talk a little bit about, take us back to those early days? What kind of a tour was it, or how many shows did you guys get to do?
Yeah, we played a lot in the Northeast, and that's kind of been my story. I've really only toured in Europe with Only the Witness, and then in the Northeast with both Witness and Milltown. And Milligram did some shows out to the Midwest, but that's kind of as far as I've traveled. And so Milltown was stuck kind of in the Northeast. We had originally planned. One of the ideas we threw at the label was like, hey, what if we did a full U.S. tour before we do this album? And they were like, nah, we want to get you in the studio as soon as possible. So we were kind of limited to like the Northeast. I think we played as far north as Maine, maybe, but definitely no farther south than like Philly. We played a lot in New York. We played a lot in Massachusetts. I think we played in New Hampshire. Like it was a band that was pretty much local to the Boston area, and we played with bands like, what did we play with? Shift. We played. Let's see who else. Oh, actually, we played in DC. I forgot about that. We played with Jesus Lizard and Babina. Yeah, we played with Mike Watt. We played with Ignite. We played with Damnation AD. We played with a pretty wide variety of bands, including like hardcore shows in Boston. And quite often people were like, I don't know if you guys kind of really work with hardcore. And we're like, well, we all come from the hardcore scene. We're high energy. We don't really care what you think. We're going to play whatever shows we want to, and bands that ask us to play with them, we're going to play with them. So we really didn't like hold ourselves to be one particular kind of band. When we played with like straight edge hardcore bands, the straight edge hardcore bands were like, you guys don't match, Like, that's fine. Brian's been in straight edge hardcore bands for his whole musical career. No problem. Anybody who knows him, if they recognize him on stage, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's a straight edge hardcore guy. But we definitely didn't fit into one mold, which I appreciate. Like I've always been kind of eclectic. I like to play different kinds of shows. So we were always pushing boundaries. We had a close connection to DC because of the fact that at least two of the guys are from DC. So we're like, we're gonna use those connections, play with anyone who will invite us to play. And because we had a really good booking team at the time, that's how we were able to get shows at like 930 Club and Black Cat and that kind of thing.
Oh, very good. As you were privy to give us a sneak peek to listen to this new Milltown music.
Yeah, love it.
Just absolutely loved it. It blew me away the first time I listened to it. But, as I'm going to go track to track, I always come back, and we discussed this before, was, Twin Olympic Pools. Very haunting track of sorts. Take us back into the writing and recording of that song and the motivation behind it, because it is fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It started out, believe it or not, as a really heavy song. And we do have a version of that, which we still want to record with Brian. We definitely have like very rough demos of it. But because the mood of the song is very heavy, we thought, hey, it's going to work really well as a heavy, like very loud rock song. Once we got into the studio, we realized, hey, the melodies are pretty delicate. Let's try a totally different application to it. And it worked out well with, I think we had a little bit of bass on there, some guitar, and it was a very moody session. We're out in the barn in Longby Farm. Lights are low, and we had some really cool mic situations where we kind of worked with the room. We wanted to do almost like a quadraphonic sound. That didn't quite work out, but that's okay. We were like, all right, let's just try some things. And then when we finally took all those tracks and mixed it down with Brian was able to take ambient stuff from that track and as well as like a few ambient noises from other tracks and bring it together so that it has that almost unsettling vibe that you hear in the current track.
Oh, it's just a fantastic track. It just for me it just bounces right off. I was like, whoa, when I first heard that track. And I don't want to give the other tracks like, hey, they're less, but man, that was one that just really bounced for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Obviously, the title track, Tales of Never Letting Go, was another one that I liked. And Unraveling is out there for people to listen to, like Apple Music and stuff to listen to. But can you talk a little bit about the title track, Tales of Never Letting Go?
Yeah, Tales of Never Letting Go is, I think, key to the whole album. That's why we called the album this. It's really about that situation that happens in many people's lives where you're connected to something and you don't want to leave this thing. It could be a job, it could be a person, it could be even a pet or something like that. And you're just you're stuck in a cycle where you appreciate everything that happened, or maybe sometimes things went wrong and you just want it to be the way it was. That's kind of a vibe that permeated a lot of the music on the album, and that's why we named the album that. The energy in Tales Never Letting Go was always like very powerful live. Some sing-alongs that can happen there, that always worked really well. And for a lot of my friends, as we've gotten older, it also sort of strikes a chord for people who are in recovery. The whole concept of being aware of what you're putting in your body, and we've never a straight edge band at all, but it's also about being aware and trying to improve whenever possible. And sometimes you limit yourself either through some chemicals you're putting in your body, or even just a vibe that you have that's not good for you.
You talked a little bit about Longview Farm Studios. You recorded this album there originally. It's a legendary place for punk bands that have recorded their albums there. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more of the experience of recording in that proper studio in that environment, opposed to some of the other studios that you've recorded in the past?
My first proper studio, like professional studio experience, was in Fort Apache, and Fort Apache was like a very different vibe from Longview Farm because it was in the city. You have a lot of bands that ended up on Tang, a lot of like very early Boston alternative rock bands that had recorded there, but also like Slapshot and a lot of hardcore bands that recorded there. And it was a vibe that was very close, like quarters. Everything's very tight. There's only so much room because it's in the city.
Yeah.
Longview Farm was very different because it's in a really big space. The barn itself, there's a major, an actual, like, it used to be a functioning barn, a big red barn. You can see it inside the album liner notes and stuff. And then there's a smaller section, which is dedicated to closer sounds, smaller ambient sounds, and better sort of sound isolation. And that's actually where Bad Brains recorded, where Living Colour recorded. Lots of bands recorded in that smaller area. And then everyone was able to, when you needed to, sort of mic an area outside of there if you wanted to, or play in that larger area and just sort of get a larger resonant sound inside the barn. We did as much as taking microphones and running them up to the cupola at the top of the barn, and Ron St. Germain flew his plane at the cupola, and we recorded that. It's actually on the album. So that we spent a whole day doing that. So probably a waste of money, but I'm really glad we did it. It was such an amazing experience where we got to experiment as much as we were capable of experimenting at the time, being kind of a new band to each other. We only existed for roughly 3 years, but we really tried to stretch out as much as we could. If we had been a more experienced band, we probably could have made a better use of the space. Or if we had recorded with someone like Ron St. Germain, who's already very creative and knew that space like the back of his hand. But it was just a really amazing experience. The staff at that place, all just very kind to us. We each had our own little room to hang out in. I chose the room that was called the Keith Richards Suite. The Keith Richards suite is basically tucked away. There's no daylight that ever reaches that room, and you're kind of like you're just sleeping on a bed on the floor. There's fieldstone walls. It's also connected to there's a sauna that's connected to that room. There's a hot tub that's connected to that room, and everyone kind of like circulates around that room. But I just had a really magical experience, just not having to worry about the sunlight. I could kind of wake up late. I guess if you had a life like Keith Richards, that might have been like necessary, right?
Yeah.
I was just happy to be able to like sleep late. but it was just a really cool experience. It felt this history not only of the other bands that have been there, but because this is a it was an active farm in 1800s. The house I live in right now, I mean, I live in a condo or whatever, but my apartment is in a building that was built in 1884. So I'm used to being in really old structures. I like that, wood everywhere, and they can feel the age of the building. And that helped to give a vibe, I think, to the recording, where we're in this space that has a history. You're not in some cold, unfeeling place. It was pretty magical.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to take anything away from bands that email their tracks back together, because we've talked to some amazing bands that the guys are in different parts of the country and they just emailed the track, and I think that's amazing, and they put together some great songs. But you miss out on those personal experiences and I guess the extra soul that it gives to the song.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that the democratization through technology that we're experiencing now is necessary. I want everyone to be able to make the music they want to make, and that is facilitated by asynchronous recordings, by distributed band members, geographically distributed band members. I feel like that is necessary and should happen, because we shouldn't have to have a budget like we had to go into a studio like this. We wanted to record in our crappy little studio that our guitar player had, and that would have saved us a lot of money. But we wouldn't have had this experience, and the album probably would have ended up sounding different.
With that being said, we've talked to so many guests that we have the pros and cons of with new technology, you can record albums in your own home, you can do it in your bathroom, anywhere you want in your home. And with that being said, proper studios, they're not as prevalent as they once were. They're expensive, yada yada. And we've also come across artists that say, hey, we wasted a lot of time in a proper studio by not focusing on the task at hand. We're out smoking cigarettes, we're having a beer, whatever, outside, this and that. But in your mind, in today's music landscape, do you feel as though that, technology in the home to create music has that best interest for music than it does, opposed to getting into that proper studio? Yes, I know it's expensive, but I guess maybe your thoughts on the whole, paradigm of it all.
Yeah, I guess one great analogy here is when you think about when you're taking photographs on your phone, right? When you used to have to worry about the film and the camera itself, you had a very different set of limitations.
Right.
So you're taking photos, you're taking fewer photos, but every single photo you're taking, you're trying to do your best. Now you can take 10,000 photos in the amount of time that you used to take 20. And I'm not saying that quality is necessarily better, because you have more options now to choose the best one. And getting back to the recording aspect, yes, we played some of those songs 20 times. But in the days when you didn't have that kind of a budget for, never mind studio time, but actual, tape, because the tape was wearing out. You think about Metallica recording Injustice for All. Those tapes got destroyed. They recorded so many times on the same tapes, and they're literally splicing things together with an X-Acto knife, and taping it back together, and then that's the tape all of a sudden. And there's nothing left to the original tape because you sliced it back together, physically spliced it back together so many times. The opportunity to record, re-record, and have almost infinite amounts of memory now lends a level of freedom to it, but it also unfortunately pushes people, I think because of plugins and because of the tendency for people to want to sell music now, as opposed to just make it. When you want to sell it, you kind of fall into this category of people are doing this, so I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to be in their wake, and it's going to carry me forward. It doesn't always work that way. I feel like when people we're taking chances in an earlier time. I'm not saying that music is better in the old days. I don't mean it that way. But when you're focused really hard on making great music in the moment and you only have the opportunity to do, let's say, 20 takes as opposed to 1,000 takes,
right.
You maybe were able to come up with something that's a little bit more spontaneous. If you did come up with something spontaneous, you were less likely to just throw it away.
And the brilliant mistakes back then that you don't have any longer.
Yeah, the happy accidents that's what makes art wonderful. And whether you're doing a watercolor painting and you do a little smudge and have to fix that problem with another pen stroke or be creative, those are the things that make art human. And as we use more digital technology, we're kind of taking the humanity out of it. I don't mean to say that people shouldn't use these tools, but I think that people should just be cognizant of the fact that the more digitized everything sounds and the more you use quantization and all of the things that take the life out of beats and noise and grit, you're losing a little bit of personality every time you do that.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been working with Brian. We talked about that. Talk about, do you stay in contact with the other members of the band? And after breathing new life into these tracks, is there any talks of maybe a reunion show or?
So I just actually hung out with Jay and Rob Delaney, the drummer, tonight. Jay and Rob are like awesome people. We are very closely linked geographically and also like personality-wise. The only reason that Brian, we couldn't hang out with Brian is because Brian's down in D.C. Yeah. Matt, I think Matt's out in California now. He has a very different life than the rest of us, but he's got his own thing. He's been a producer, produced like Panic at the Disco, Katy Perry, Kesha, stuff like that. So we're kind of in a different world. However, just hanging out with those guys tonight, we had, just had a couple of beers, just being able to chill out, talk about old days, the future days. We definitely have decided that we would love to play at least one show together. We don't know if that would happen. We did get asked to play a show in January, which I don't think we'd be prepared for because of everyone's schedules. Both Brian and Matt have, their own production schedules that they have to abide by. And then Jay is a guitar tech for the Dropkick Murphys, so he's on tour all the time. And he's been doing that for a long time, and they treat him really well. So that's like his family. He can't say no to when they go on tour. And Rob is a high level manager for AV crew, and there's a lot going on with everyone's lives. I don't know when it would happen, but I would guess if it's going to happen, it'll probably happen next year sometime.
Oh, so cool. Very cool.
Well, speaking of next year would be the 30th anniversary of Only Living Witness's 96 Innocence album. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the making of that album, or is there any stories?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. That's probably my favorite album I've been involved with. I love a lot of things that I've recorded, but that is a representative of a time where I was, in a band with these guys. We had made the first record. We loved the first record, but we wanted to impact our legacy in a different way. We wanted to change it up a little bit. And so we had a very different approach. Whereas the first album was very produced and we had 10 days to do it. Again, we get back to that idea of when you have a shortened timeline. So we had twice as long to make Innocence. And we made some decisions that might have been like less commercially viable than maybe the label wanted us to, but we were influenced by different things. We were listening to a lot of stuff that was kind of raw, and we wanted to make it raw, so we did. And I really love that it came out the way it did. There's a couple, technical things that I would have changed if we could go back and fix it. I think, unfortunately, those tape reels they got lost in like some water damage in someone's basement or something like that. Unfortunately, I'd love to be able to remix that, but it's never going to happen.
Well, I discovered Only Living Witness because I'm Facebook friends with Craig Silverman.
Nice.
Yeah. So, we've been blessed to interview members of Agnostic Front on this podcast.
Awesome.
Talk a little bit about your collaboration with Craig back in the day. Such a cool guy. Absolutely.
So both he and Eric, they were like basically very close neighbors in the town where they grew up. They hung out a lot, and they had very common influences. And Craig was not in the initial incarnation of Only Living Witness when we formed that band, but when it was time for Eric and his brother to kind of like, they decided they weren't going to collaborate together anymore. Eric's immediate choice for guitar was Craig. So it was a time when we were slowing down from what was almost more like a thrash and hardcore style band to like more Sabbath focused riffing and stuff like that, like a more slower pace. I shifted from just shouted vocals to much more singing, and Craig was a great complement to that because he was able to fill in all of that heaviness from the initial thing that we were doing, but shifted over into more of a intentional, catchy song structure and atmospheric approach to writing the songs. He really understood how to take that crunch of the guitar and make the song chug forward, you know. And he was interpreting a lot of riffs that came initially from Eric. This one song that kind of changed everything was Slug. And I remember Craig mentioning back when we were in the original incarnation, he's like, that's my favorite song you guys do. Slug is the song. So him coming into the band came through that filter of appreciating this riff that Eric had written, which was slower, more dirty and big sounding, big riff. And he's like, all right, yeah, I can do that. And we're going to throw in a little Slayer, a little Celtic Frost, a little bit of, Venom. We're gonna make it into something that hadn't really existed yet. I mean, there were bands that were doing things slightly similar, but I think that Witness was unique enough that we haven't been copied exactly. I feel like they all had like great influences, used them to the best of their ability to create something unique, and I was lucky enough to be there and sing along.
Awesome. Monster albums.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of take it back to Milltown for a second. One track that I noticed on there that I listened to, Art Thief, is also out on another band or shares the same title, or the band's the Northern Skulls. But can you talk a little bit about that project? It's a little newer, I think.
Absolutely. So I never thought the Milltown album was going to come out. So I was like, look, guys, I have this song. Maybe we can kind of adapt it a little bit. It's a very different take on the music, but the lyrics and the vocal line are very similar. And a couple lines are different vocally. But, the Northern Skulls guys, so that's the bass player who, him and his brother were the bassist for Gangrene when Another Wasted Night came out. So Alcohol and, that whole era of Gangrene, that was they were the unit. And so after I had been kind of not really inactive, but I was in a band called Raw Raider War, and Raw Raider War was much more aggressive. He's like, hey, you want to be in a band where you sing again? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try something. And so Northern Skulls I'm very proud of that. It was a short-lived thing, and we had intended to do a follow-up EP, and we were going to record it out in Chicago with Steve Albini. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and we had to cancel that session. So that would have been another EP from Steve Albini's studio. That was kind of like a crushing blow to our creativity. Like we still have those songs. Maybe that'll come out someday. I don't know. We wrote some really great music together, and I love those guys. They're awesome people. The reason that song, and we did another Milltown cover. We did 8645. It really came together in a way that was therapeutic, because I wanted the Northern Skulls weren't intended to be a Milltown cover band at all, but it was like, let's take these melodies and let's build something from that. And those guys approached it in a very different way than Milltown would, because they come from more punk rock and hardcore background, the Northern Skulls guys, but their approach is also understanding what Milltown was kind of shooting for. So like we had one song that almost sounded more like Bauhaus Double Dare, and that's one of my favorite Bauhaus songs of all time. So if we could do that one, I would love to do it. But it's an unfulfilled dream at this point,
Oh, very good. Well, the Tales of Never Letting Go is being packaged in different colored vinyl. It's very unique, and it was designed. Help me out here, Tom Bergowitz. Is that how I say it? Right?
Yeah. I don't want to say it wrong. Barayovich or we just call him Tom B. But yes, Tom is a very accomplished graphic designer and visual artist. He also designed the 30th anniversary Quicksand Slip release. And like I said, he worked at Caroline for a long time. That's why he was involved in the Misfits box set, the Coffin box. He's done tons and tons of records. He's a very chill dude. When we were talking about how to do this Milltown artwork, we agreed on sort of a vibe, and so we ended up with this, photography from the Dust Bowl, and that's out of Getty Archives. But we really wanted to give this feeling of sort of desolation. Part of it comes from the contemporary political climate, where you're feeling like things are really bad right now, and they're only going to get worse for a while. But the whole idea was when you pull out the artwork and you see the label, for instance, on the vinyl, you'll see that's a really beautiful, lush painting of flowers. And the idea was that, okay, this is the final fruit after waiting for 28 years of us thinking this is never going to happen, and it's lush and colorful and beautiful inside.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of bands still like to do promotional videos and different things. It's very important to get, there's visual media as well as the listening media. Is there any plans for the band to work with anybody to do any promotional videos?
We just did a couple lyric videos, and I feel like those are probably as much as we're going to do. I don't foresee us taking our contemporary faces the way we look 28 years later and trying to promote, pantomime a video or anything like that. We're not going to lip sync anything. But we might do more lyric videos. The visuals for the actual album, I don't want to try and mine that for much more than we have, but I do have a lot of like older photography, some drawings and stuff that I did while I was in the studio in Longview Farm. Might just throw some of that stuff together, but probably not a lot more.
Very good. Good.
I was perusing around and I found, not only was the Northern Skulls on Bandcamp, but Milligram also is available on Bandcamp. Love that medium. Can you talk a little bit about using the various bands that you're in, using different approaches to, selling and promoting your bands?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not opposed to Spotify, but I don't personally subscribe to Spotify. I think it's a great way to share music, and especially a great way for people to use not just the algorithm, which I think is particularly good in Spotify, but the public and private playlists on Spotify. Bandcamp, I wish, could get to that level, and I think they were purchased by like some big gaming company, right? I feel like they should if they were really smart about it, they would have a presence on gaming platforms. There should be a Bandcamp for PS5 app that I could use to peruse music. I primarily use PS5 for most media, and for that reason, I get most of my music from YouTube, actually. And YouTube for me is I just pay for the premium version, so I don't have ads, and I use it for public and private playlists. I like the algorithm. Sometimes I find the algorithm to be a little problematic, and that is one challenge to a lot of digital platforms is the algorithm. If you poison it with some, like, let's say I go in and play something I don't really like that much, or it just happens to pop up and I let it go, that can change my algorithm for weeks, I find, because it really thinks I want that Shakira video in there, But nothing against Shakira, but it's not generally what I listen to. And the idea that that my algorithm could be sort of changed dramatically by one video or a couple of videos, I don't like that idea. I should be able to go in there and fix it. There should be some way for me to interact with it, and typically I'll do that by playing stuff I really do like. I think that algorithms can be not hacked but influenced in a way that you can make your algorithm work for you. I like to discover through all the algorithms. And I guess that's more of a general statement across all the different platforms. I have friends that swear by Tidal. I haven't gone there yet, but I think that's a great way to get very high quality music and like make sure that the bands get some money. But back to your initial question, I feel like Bandcamp is currently the best way to give money directly to the artists, and that's very important.
Have you checked into the reward music that Dweezil Zappa put together? That kind of
I have not.
It's similar to the Bandcamp format, but you can create your own merch store on there, and it's an all-inclusive, all-in-one type thing. You should check it out if you have a chance.
I will, absolutely.
Yeah. So I got one last question for you, then we'll leave you alone for the evening. So we're going back to Tales of Never Letting Go. 28 years ago when the album was shelved by the label, it's sitting there. What was the atmosphere for you and the rest of your bandmates? Like, how do you process? You put all this work into recording these songs. The label's not going to release your music. What do you do? Where do you go? How do you cope with that?
Well, for me, I had a great job. I worked at Harvard at the time, and I just basically said, I'm not going to play the game. And when we say that they shelved our music, the reason I say that is because I basically quit the band because they wanted us to re-record the same album and spend another $250,000 to record another album. They refused to let us record with Brian again. Yeah. And we said, why are we going to squander that much money? There's no reason that we should have spent it the first time. If it was just going to be a test run, we could have done that with Brian. So basically, when I left the band, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to play this major label game. I went back to my day job at Harvard. I had a great benefits program. I had a good salary. Soon after that, I went over to MIT. I worked at Harvard and MIT for 15 years. Like, I didn't need a label to pay my rent because they weren't going to do a good enough job anyway. We were each living on $600 a month when we were quote unquote professional musicians. Our rent was $800 at the time. Now my mortgage is whatever, double that. So let's be realistic, and I'm going back to my job, and I'm just going to play music to enjoy it, and that made me enjoy it much more. That's why I did Milligram. Milligram was much more of a gloves are off. I'm going to play whatever I want. It's going to be distorted and weird and messed up, and I will work my day job. I will travel. We did some touring. Like I said, I worked in the libraries, had a good vacation package. So I could go and travel. That's exactly how I toured in Witness too. I worked in the libraries at Harvard. I took a month and a half off, came back. That was all my time off for the year, but I could pay my rent. I didn't have to sell things. I didn't have to sell myself. I was able to just play music. I feel like that is the way I've always approached music. Just work, pay my bills, make music, and don't listen to the rules of the people that are trying to make me an indentured servant. And that was really where my mind was at the end of Milltown. So to sort of wrap it up with this album, I feel really lucky that we were able to take this thing that I had kind of negative feelings about for a long time because it felt like we were being treated poorly. I don't want to play it like I'm the victim or something like that, but it was difficult to have positive feelings about this art that we had created almost under duress. And then to think about, well, is it ever going to come out? Okay, well, no, I'm just going to write it off. I'm not going to think about it anymore. To have it actually come out now, this is mind-blowing. I feel very, very lucky, and I credit Brian and Tom B for making it happen. I never expected it to happen.
As far as satisfactory level, we always talk to artists that say, this new album, if you could go back, would you tinker with anything, or walking away from this album as it's completed now? Are you 100% satisfied with the end product?
Yeah, there's a couple songs here and there where I hear a little bit of immaturity in our playing or whatever. But come on, for what we had at the time, our capabilities, I feel like this is a great representation of where we were. And if we had stayed a band for another 10 years, something like that, maybe I'd have different expectations of the band. But for our ability to communicate with each other, our ability to play our instruments, my ability to sing, even that was where we were at the time. I feel very good about it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, Jonah, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No, this is it. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, and thanks for the great questions. You guys have been very kind.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an honor. Yeah. This is how things are going to work out. We're going to expedite this interview for next week since the new album is going to be released on Friday. We have one ahead of yours, but we got to get this thing out so we can promote the living daylights out of it. So that's how we're going to do. That's how it's going to all work out. And then Jeff is going to get it all cleaned up. He's the editing wizard. And then once it's all done, I'll send you the end product, and please share it to any social you have. We'd really appreciate it.
Oh, man. Thank you, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Cool. And if you guys need anything, let me know. I'm happy to. I think I probably have the sizes, but if you need Witness shirts or anything like that, let me know. I'll send you. I'll put them in the mail for you.
Oh man, yeah. Awesome. We're definitely gonna hit you up on that one.
Yeah.
I'll text you. Cool. I'll text you tomorrow. How about that?
Sounds great.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey. Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever